The moon was full that night over the town of Hollow Creek, and the whole pack had gathered in the big clearing behind the old stone hall. Nobody wanted to miss this. Word had spread fast, the way it always does in small packs where everyone knows everyone's business before breakfast. Ivy Marrow stood in the middle of that clearing with 300 pairs of eyes on her. She kept her hands folded in front of her, and she stared at a loose thread on her sleeve because it was easier than looking at the crowd. 5 threads had come undone. She would fix that later, if there was a later. Across from her stood Kade Thornwood, the Alpha King of Hollow Creek. He had his arms crossed and his jaw set tight, like a man bracing for bad weather. He hadn't wanted this ceremony. Everybody in the pack knew that. The pack council had pushed him into it, quoting some old rule from 100 years back that said an Alpha King had to accept a mate once the bond showed itself, no matter what he wanted. He didn't look happy about it. He looked like someone about to return a gift he never asked for. Then he said the words, "I, Kade Thornwood, reject you, Ivy Marrow, as my mate." The clearing went quiet. Not just quiet, heavy, the kind of silence that presses down on your chest and makes it hard to breathe. Ivy felt something twist, deep inside her, in the part of her that wasn't quite human. Her wolf whimpered, and for a second she thought she might cry right there in front of everyone. She didn't. Instead, she smiled. "Okay," she said. That was it. Just one word. She turned around and started walking back toward the crowd, and nobody moved to stop her, because nobody knew what to do. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Every story anyone had ever heard about rejected mates ended the same way. Tears, begging, maybe even a fight. Not a woman smiling and walking off like she'd just been told the store was out of milk. Kade's arms stayed crossed, but his hands curled into fists without him telling them to. To understand why Ivy didn't cry that night, you have to go back a few years, to when she was younger, and her mother used to tell her about her father. Ivy's mother had been mated once too, in a way. Not through rejection, but through loss. Her father died in a car crash before their bond ever had the chance to finish. Ivy grew up watching her mother carry that unfinished bond around like a stone in her pocket. It never stopped hurting. It never fully healed. And Ivy had promised herself, somewhere deep down, that she would never let herself become someone with a hole like that. So when Kade said those words, some old stubborn part of her stood up and said, "Not me. Not this time." She reached the edge of the crowd, and her cousin Rosalind grabbed her wrist. "What are you doing?" Rosalind whispered. "You're just walking away?" "Going home," Ivy said. "I've got laundry." "Ivy, this is serious. He just rejected you in front of the whole pack." "I heard him," Ivy said. "I was standing right there." "Then why aren't you upset?" Ivy looked at her cousin for a moment. "Who says I'm not upset?" She pulled her wrist free, gently, and kept walking. Behind her, she could feel the whole pack watching, waiting for her to break. She didn't give them the show. Her grandmother used to say that the fastest way to take the crown off a king's head was to tell him you never wanted it in the first place. Ivy figured this was as good a time as any to test that out. She didn't get far. Behind her came a sound every wolf in Hollow Creek knew and dreaded. The sound of bones shifting too fast, a body trying to change shape before it was ready. People scattered backward, clearing space in a hurry. Kade was losing control of his shift, right there, in the middle of the ceremony. In all the years the Thornwood family had ruled Hollow Creek, no Alpha King had ever lost control like that. Not during wars, not during hard winters, not even at his own father's funeral, from what the older pack members said. Kade was known for his control. It was the thing people respected about him most. And now it was slipping right off him in front of everyone. Ivy stopped walking. She turned around. Kade's eyes had gone full wolf, gold, with pupils narrowed to slits. Claws pushed halfway out of his knuckles, then pulled back in, then pushed out again, like his body couldn't decide what it wanted to be. His second in command, a broad-shouldered man named Rin, reached out to grab his arm and got knocked backward for his trouble, landing hard in the dirt. "Worth a try," Rin muttered, rubbing his shoulder. "Kade," Ivy said his name plainly, no fear in her voice, though her heart was hammering. He turned his head toward her, Whatever was fighting for control inside him seemed to catch on her voice like a hook. "Ivy," he said, and it came out half like a word and half like a growl, dragged through a throat that didn't want to make human sounds right then. "That's not my problem," she said. "You rejected me. Remember? Take it back." "No." The word hit him like something physical. His shoulders jerked. For a second, it looked like the claws might win the fight for good, and everyone around them took another step back. "I don't want it back," Kade said, forcing the words out through gritted teeth. Slowly, the gold in his eyes started to fade, just a little, like someone was dimming a light. "I panicked. The council, that old treaty rule. I thought if I rejected you first, it would at least be my choice instead of theirs. I thought that would matter." "It doesn't," Ivy said. "It just means you humiliated me in front of everyone I know, and now you get to stand there having a change of heart, and I'm supposed to be relieved about it. I know it doesn't make sense. You don't get to have a crisis about it after you've already said the words, Kade. That's not how this works. I know. You said it in front of the whole pack. I know that too." His breathing had gone ragged, arms trembling like there was still a war going on inside him, but slowly, one shaky breath at a time, he was winning it. The claws stayed retracted. His eyes dimmed further, gold fading back toward brown. "Then don't take me back," he said finally. "I'm not asking you to forget what I said. Just stay long enough for me to earn a different answer than the one I gave you tonight." Ivy studied him for a long moment. Behind her, the whole clearing had gone silent again, 300 people holding their breath at once, waiting to see what she'd say. She thought about her mother, about the hole shaped like a life that never got the chance to happen. "1 month," she said. "You get 1 month to prove you're a person and not just a king following some old rule book. If you're still like this by the end of it," she gestured at him, at the claws that had only just gone back where they belonged, at the man barely holding his own shape together, "then I'm gone. For good. No second chances after that." Kade's claws pulled back all the way, for the first time since the ceremony started. "Deal," he said. Ivy turned and walked toward home, and this time, nobody watching mistook the steadiness in her shoulders for anything except exactly what it was: a woman who had decided, right then, that she was not going to be anyone's afterthought. The next morning, Ivy woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing on the nightstand. She groaned and rolled over, expecting it to be Rosalind, who had texted her about 11 times the night before wanting details. Instead, it was an unknown number. "This is Kade. Got your number from the pack directory. Hope that's okay. Wanted to say I'm sorry." Actually said, not just thought it and hoped you'd guess. Ivy stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she typed back. "You have a pack directory with people's phone numbers in it. Emergency contact list. Technically. And this counts as an emergency? I'd say so, yeah." She almost smiled. Almost. She caught herself and put the phone face down on the bed instead, because smiling at his texts felt like giving him credit he hadn't earned yet. But she didn't block the number either. Over the next few days, Kade showed up in small ways. Not dramatic ways, no flowers on her doorstep, no grand speeches in front of the pack. He was smarter than that. Or maybe he'd just learned something from the disaster of the ceremony. Instead, he did things like fixing the fence at the edge of her mother's property that had been leaning for 2 years, without saying a word about it, without asking for thanks. Ivy found out only because her mother mentioned that some pack workers had come by to fix it, and when Ivy asked around, she found out there hadn't been any workers sent. Just Kade, alone, with a toolbox, on a Tuesday afternoon. She didn't say anything to him about it, but she noticed. A few days after that, she ran into him at the general store in town. He was standing in the aisle holding 2 different brands of coffee like he was trying to solve a math problem. "You look lost," she said, walking past him toward the bread. He looked up, startled, like he hadn't expected to see her there. "I don't actually drink coffee much. My assistant usually handles this kind of thing." "You have an assistant for buying coffee?" "I have an assistant for a lot of things," he admitted. "Turns out that doesn't prepare you for regular life very well." "No kidding." He held up the 2 bags. "Which one is better?" Ivy looked at them. One was cheap and mediocre. The other was the same brand her mother had always bought, back before things got tight and they switched to the cheaper stuff. "That one," she said, pointing at the good one. "But it's more expensive." "I can afford it," he said, and there was something dry in his voice, almost a joke, like he knew exactly how that sounded, coming from a king with more money than most of the pack combined. Ivy almost laughed. She caught herself just in time. "Thanks for the fence," she said instead, before she could stop herself. Kade blinked. "You weren't supposed to know that was me. Small town. Nothing stays secret for long." "Fair point." He set the good coffee in his basket. "It needed fixing. I had time. It wasn't some grand gesture, if that's what you're worried about." "I wasn't worried about anything," Ivy said. "I was just saying thanks." "You're welcome then." They stood there a second too long, neither one quite sure what to say next, and then Ivy grabbed her bread and left before the moment could turn into something bigger than it needed to be. That night, lying in bed, she found herself replaying the conversation more times than she wanted to admit. The weeks moved on like that. Small moments, nothing forced. Kade started showing up to the same places Ivy went, not in a way that felt like stalking, but in a way that felt like effort. He came to the pack meetings that dealt with things like the school and the food bank, meetings an Alpha King usually sent someone else to handle. He started talking more, not giving orders the way he used to, but actually listening when the older pack members brought up problems. Rosalind noticed it too. "He's being weird," she said one afternoon, watching Kade help carry boxes at the community hall without being asked. "Alpha Kings don't carry boxes." "Maybe this one does now," Ivy said. "You like him." "I don't like him. I'm giving him a chance to prove himself. There's a difference." "Sure there is," Rosalind said, in the tone of someone who very much did not believe that. Ivy ignored her. About 2 weeks into the month, Kade asked her to meet him. Not at the pack hall, not anywhere official, but at the old lookout point above the creek, where teenagers used to sneak off to when they wanted privacy. Ivy almost said no. Then curiosity got the better of her. She found him sitting on the edge of the rocks, looking down at the water. He didn't stand up when she arrived, just patted the space next to him. "I'm not going to push you off," he said, when she hesitated. "Just wanted somewhere quiet to talk." She sat down, keeping a careful distance between them. "I owe you an explanation," Kade said. "Not an excuse, an explanation." "Go on then." He was quiet for a moment, staring out at the water. "My father was Alpha King before me. He believed mates were a weakness. Said they made a king easy to control. Threaten the mate, and you control the king. He never let himself get close to anyone, not even my mother. Not really. When she died, he barely reacted. I used to think that was strength." Ivy didn't say anything. She just listened. "When the council told me the bond had triggered, all I could think about was him. About becoming someone who could be controlled through you. I panicked, and I did the only thing I knew how to do, which was reject first, before anyone else could use you against me." "That's not an excuse," Ivy said quietly. "That's still you making a decision about my life without asking me." "I know," Kade said. "I'm not asking you to forgive it. I'm just telling you where it came from, because you deserve to know, even if it doesn't fix anything." Ivy looked out at the water too. Somewhere below, a bird called out over the current. "My mother lost my father before their bond ever finished," she said, after a while. "She spent her whole life with this hole in her that never closed up. I told myself a long time ago I wasn't going to end up like that. So when you said those words, some part of me just refused to let it break me the way it broke her." Kade turned to look at her. "That took more strength than anything I've ever done." "Probably," Ivy said, and this time there was a little humor in her voice, enough that Kade almost smiled. They sat there a while longer, not saying much else, just letting the quiet settle between them in a way that didn't feel heavy anymore. The rest of the month went on like that, slow, careful, neither one rushing anything. Kade kept showing up in small, steady ways. He stopped hiding behind the title of Alpha King and started acting like a person who genuinely wanted to know Ivy, not just claim her because some old rule said he had to. There were hard days too. One evening, near the end of the 3rd week, Kade's control slipped again. Not fully, not like the night of the ceremony, but enough that his eyes flashed gold during a pack meeting when someone brought up an old complaint about his father's rule. Ivy watched him grip the edge of the table until his knuckles went white, breathing hard until it passed. Afterward, she found him outside, sitting on the porch steps of the hall. "You okay?" she asked. "That hasn't happened in years," he admitted. "The controls slipping like that. Since the ceremony?" He nodded. "Since the ceremony." Ivy sat down next to him. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe you spent so long locking everything down that you forgot how to actually feel anything. Maybe this is just what it looks like when that finally cracks open a little." Kade looked at her for a long moment. "You're better at this than you should be. I've had practice being strong when I didn't want to be," Ivy said simply. "Doesn't mean it's easy. Just means I know what it looks like from the inside." He didn't say anything else. He just reached over, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and took her hand. She let him. They sat like that for a long time, not talking, just watching the last bit of evening light fade behind the hills. The last week of the month came faster than either of them expected. Word had gotten around the pack about the deal. 1 month. A real chance. A real answer at the end of it. People had opinions, of course, because people always do. Some thought Ivy was foolish for giving him a second chance at all. Others thought Kade had a lot of nerve expecting one. Ivy tried not to listen to any of it. This wasn't about what the pack thought. It never had been. On the final night of the month, the pack gathered again in the same clearing where it had all started. The moon wasn't quite full this time, just a few days off, casting a softer light over the stone hall, and the crowd gathered in front of it. Ivy stood in the same spot she'd stood in a month before. Kade stood across from her, in the same place too. But everything about the moment felt different. "You know what happens now," Kade said, quiet enough that only she could hear it clearly. "I know," Ivy said. "Whatever you decide, I want you to know the month wasn't a performance. It wasn't me trying to win some kind of game. It was me trying to become someone worth choosing." Ivy studied him for a long moment. The same jaw, the same broad shoulders, but something behind his eyes had changed. There was less king in them now, and more man. "I've spent my whole life afraid of ending up like my mother," she said, loud enough now for the pack to hear, though she was really only talking to him. "Afraid of loving someone and being left with a hole where they used to be. When you rejected me, some part of me decided I'd rather be alone and whole than shattered by someone who didn't want me." The clearing was silent, the way it had been a month ago, but this silence felt different too. Less like held breath, more like anticipation. "But you didn't just apologize and expect it to be enough," Ivy went on. "You showed up, every day, in small ways until I stopped waiting for you to slip back into being the man who said those words in front of everyone I know." She stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "I'm not doing this because some old treaty says I have to," she said. "I'm doing it because you earned it." Kade's breath caught, and for once, it wasn't his wolf trying to break free. It was something much simpler than that, something that looked a lot like relief, and a lot like hope. "I accept the bond," Ivy said. The clearing erupted, not into shouting, not into chaos, but into something warmer, a low murmur of approval that spread through the crowd like sunlight breaking through clouds. Rosalind, standing near the front, wiped at her eyes and pretended she wasn't crying. Kade reached for Ivy's hands, and this time there was no hesitation in either of them. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for not letting me get away with the easy version of this." "Don't thank me yet," Ivy said, though there was warmth in her voice now, real and unguarded. "You've still got a lot of fences to fix. I'll fix every fence in Hollow Creek if that's what it takes. Let's not get carried away," she said, and this time she let herself smile all the way, the kind of smile she hadn't let the pack see a month ago. 1 month down. Let's see how the rest goes. Kade smiled back, and for the first time since that night under the fat yellow moon, the Alpha King of Hollow Creek looked less like a king following rules laid down by men long dead, and more like someone finally choosing his own path. One that had Ivy standing right in the middle of it, not because an old bond demanded it, but because he had learned, slowly and honestly, exactly what she was worth. The pack didn't fall silent again after that. Instead, for the first time in a long while, Hollow Creek felt like the kind of place where things could actually start over, where an alpha king could learn to be a person first, and a king second, and where a woman who once smiled through her own heartbreak could finally let that smile mean something real. And somewhere behind the stone hall, the moon kept climbing, quiet and steady, watching over a pack that had, in the space of 1 month, learned the difference between being ruled and being loved.